My daughter did not wait until I was dead to erase me. She removed my name from the building I funded, locked me outside beneath my wife's name, and told 300 guests that grief had destroyed my mind. Please, before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are listening from today. My name is Grant Mercer. I was 72 when I arrived at St. Catherine Medical Center for the dedication of the Helen Mercer Children's Recovery Pavilion. My daughter Claire stood outside the glass entrance in a silver dress. "Dad, you cannot be here tonight." Music drifted through the doors. "I am giving Caleb his grandmother's drawing. Caleb is not coming. Then I will hang it myself." Claire's expression hardened. "Your name was removed from the program. The board believes your condition could make tonight uncomfortable." "What condition?" Evan finally looked at me. "The confusion, Grant. Please leave before security has to document an incident." The word document told me more than the insult. They wanted a record showing that I had arrived confused, resisted instructions, and caused a public disturbance. "Go home before you embarrass Mom's memory." That sentence hurt more than the locked door. Instead, I looked past Claire and studied the guests. Near the stage stood Martin Voss, chief executive of Black Ridge Capital, a firm that had offered to buy Mercer Precision twice. They were there for my company. Evan noticed where I was looking and shifted enough to block my view. "All right, sweetheart. I hope the evening gives you everything you planned." Relief crossed her face too quickly. Before calling anyone, I opened the digital program Claire said no longer carried my name. Page 6 listed a private reception after the dedication. Mercer Precision Leadership Transition. The transaction advisor was Black Ridge Capital. And beneath my photograph were 4 words I had never approved. Founder Emeritus, effective immediately. They were announcing my retirement before asking me to retire. My phone rang before I could call my attorney. Claire's name appeared, but when I answered, I heard Evan speaking to someone beside her. He left quietly. "That helps us. By Monday, the board will believe he already stepped down." Then Claire said, "Make sure Caleb stays away from him until the transfer is signed." The call ended. She had dialed me by accident. I saved the recording and called Miriam Sloan, the attorney who had protected my company for 34 years. "Freeze every authority Claire and Evan possess," I said. "Block every transfer above $1. Preserve the trust servers, and find out why my retirement is being celebrated without me." Miriam did not ask whether I was angry. "Are you safe for tonight?" She paused. "Grant, do not eat or take anything they prepared for you at home. I found a medical declaration filed this afternoon. Cold settled beneath my ribs. What does it say?" "That you are mentally impaired, financially reckless, and missing." I looked back at Helen's glowing name above the entrance. My daughter had not locked me out to avoid embarrassment. She needed hundreds of witnesses to remember that I was absent, and none to remember that I was still fully capable of fighting back. "Then we protect what your mind built." While I waited for the clinic to open, she showed me the medical declaration. It had been signed by Dr. Samuel Rusk, a geriatric specialist I had never met. He claimed Claire had reported repeated disorientation, reckless donations, and an inability to recognize close relatives. His report cited my absence from the dedication as evidence that I could no longer manage a schedule. Claire had locked me outside, then recorded my absence as a symptom. An emergency guardianship petition was ready to be filed Monday morning, 2 hours before the Mercer Precision board meeting. If approved, Evan would gain temporary voting authority over my shares. It is the key that opens the next door. We called Dr. Rusk's office from a recorded line. His assistant said my evaluation had occurred by video 6 days earlier. I had spent that entire day inspecting a turbine supplier in Omaha. Someone had manufactured a medical appointment with a man who was not there. Catherine's board had not invited Black Ridge Capital, announced my retirement, or removed my name. She needed respected witnesses, a charitable setting, and Helen's name above the door to make my forced retirement appear honorable. At 8/7, Evan attempted 3 transfers totaling $6.2 million. "Dad, did you change something at the bank?" "I am having trouble remembering," I said softly. That is exactly why Evan and I have been helping. Please do not touch anything until we arrive. She did not ask whether I was safe. She asked whether I had touched the money. Dad, you need to take the blue tablets before noon. I had never been prescribed blue tablets. My donations had been acknowledged by the hospital, but their ledger showed only $3.1 million received from the Mercer Charitable Fund. The building existed, yet $5.5 million had disappeared between my signature and the hospital's bank. Miriam checked the trust instrument and found something Evan had overlooked. Any agent initiating related transfers above $500,000 within 30 days required independent trustee approval. He divided the money into smaller payments, but the aggregation clause treated them as one transaction. Every transfer was illegal. At 9:30, Evan came carrying coffee, eggs, and a white pharmacy bag. He smiled toward my doorbell camera and announced that he was checking on his confused father-in-law. I stayed out of sight while a deputy collected the bag from the porch. Inside were the blue tablets Claire insisted I needed. The label carried my name, but the prescribing physician was Dr. Rusk. Miriam's expression changed when she read the dosage. Grant, these would not treat memory loss. They would create the appearance of it. The deputy sealed the bag. Evan returned to his car and made a call. My exterior microphone captured only his side. He did not open the door. Yes, the accounts are frozen. No, do not cancel tonight's file transfer. If Blackridge sees a delay, they will walk. He drove away without the breakfast. Miriam traced the attempted transfers to a holding account created 21 months earlier. It belonged to Caleb. The grandson Claire claimed she was protecting from me. Either Caleb was part of the theft, or someone had built the entire scheme around his stolen identity. I refused to accuse Caleb until I knew whether his name was a signature or a disguise. His university email had been deactivated 4 months earlier, and every message I had sent him since Helen's funeral had been automatically forwarded to Claire. The holding company was called North Star Community Ventures. It had opened with Caleb's social security number, a scan of his passport, and an electronic signature dated 11 months earlier. The signature was not his. The preserved bank video showed Evan on camera. North Star had received 23 transfers from the Mercer Charitable Fund. A third sent $1.8 million to Blackridge Capital as an acquisition participation deposit. The fourth paid Dr. Rusk a monthly consulting fee beginning 2 weeks after Helen's death. At noon, St. Catherine's chief financial officer arrived with the hospital's original construction ledger. The pavilion had cost $3.1 million because a federal rehabilitation grant covered most of the equipment. Claire had built her forgery from one of Helen's old donor packets. The most painful document was the final donation acknowledgement. My signature appeared beneath a paragraph surrendering all naming rights and transferring control of any unused funds to North Star. A witness signature belonged to Helen. The form was dated 4 months after her death. Claire had made her mother approve the theft committed in her memory. The hospital officer whispered, "We believed North Star was your family foundation." "So did I said. Both contained the same faint gray mark beside the signature line, created by a defective scanner roller. The hospital fraud and the guardianship petition had been produced on the same machine. We traced its serial imprint to the executive copier inside Mercer Precision's finance suite, an area accessible only to Evan, Claire, and 2 senior employees. One employee, payroll director Sonia Park, had taken medical leave the week before the dedication. Sonia answered from a motel near the state line and began crying when she heard my voice. She said Evan forced her to process North Star payments after threatening to expose her husband's immigration case. She had copied the finance server before leaving and offered to surrender it. "There is a folder called Second Chair," she said. "It contains the real transaction." The encrypted archive arrived 20 minutes later. Inside were Blackridge projections showing Mercer Precision's sale price at $84 million, not the $92 million announced to the board. The missing $8 million was labeled management retention and divided between Evan, Claire, Martin Voss, and an unidentified recipient called CM. Blackridge planned to close the plant's original facility, move production to Mexico, and eliminate 186 jobs within a year. She had sold the livelihoods of people who had built the company beside me. Then Miriam opened a document titled Consent of Founder. It authorized the sale, waived independent valuation, and appointed Evan to vote my shares. My signature had been copied from Helen's funeral contract. The notary certification belonged to a woman who had died 2 years earlier. Attached to it was a photograph of me leaving Dr. Rusk's clinic, unsteady, and holding Claire's arm. I had never visited that clinic. The man in the photograph wore my coat, walked with my cane, and kept his face turned away. Someone had been rehearsing my decline in public before they attempted to prove it in court. Miriam enlarged the image. On the man's right hand was Evan's square black wedding ring. My son-in-law had dressed as me to create medical evidence, while my daughter prepared to swear that she had watched her father disappear. The initials C.M. did not belong to Claire. In Blackridge's payment schedule, Claire appeared under her full legal name. C.M. was the person designated to receive $2.4 million after the sale and accept responsibility for North Star if regulators investigated. The attached identification belonged to Caleb. His forged signature appeared beneath a confession stating that he had diverted charitable funds without his parents' knowledge. Claire and Evan were preparing to sacrifice their own son after using his identity to steal from his grandfather. They do not intend Caleb to be available when this closes. An airline itinerary in the archive showed a one-way ticket to Lisbon purchased in his name for Sunday night. They planned to send him there, drugged, discredited, or under supervision before anyone could ask why his name appeared on the accounts. I called every number I had for him. All were blocked. The sale price presented to my board was $92 million. Blackridge's internal model valued the company at $141 million after closing. Evan had hidden key contracts from the board valuation while privately promising them to Blackridge. Martin Voss had protected the scheme with a condition called founder incapacity. Blackridge could cancel the sale unless a court declared me unable to interfere. They did not need to defeat my vote. They needed to turn my vote into a medical symptom. The agreement required Claire to deliver 3 things before closing: a temporary guardianship order, a physician's declaration, and proof that I had voluntarily missed 2 public company events. My absence had been manufactured twice. Each document became another reason to take my voice. At 2:10, Sonia found a hidden audio file attached to Evan's retention contract. Martin Voss was speaking. Once Grant is under supervision, the board will follow the family. If he recovers later, the plant will already be ours. Evan asked whether Claire could handle putting her father in a facility. Voss replied, "She handled her mother's money before the funeral. She will handle this." I stopped the recording. What did he mean by Helen's money? Miriam opened the estate ledger. 3 days before Helen died, a transfer of $900,000 had left our joint investment account. The authorization appeared to be mine, but the device approval came from Claire's phone. The funds became North Star's opening capital. My daughter had started financing the theft while sitting beside her dying mother. Worse, Helen's hospice records showed Claire had asked staff to restrict my private visits during the final week, claiming I agitated her. I remembered being told Helen needed rest. I had accepted shorter visits because I loved her. Claire had used those hours alone to obtain passwords, copy signatures, and photograph documents. The conspiracy had not begun with my grief. It had begun while Helen was still alive and too weak to warn me. At 3, the investigator called. Caleb's apartment was empty. His car remained in the garage, his passport was missing, and blood had been found beside a broken phone. Security footage showed Evan entering the building 2 nights earlier and leaving with 2 men in medical uniforms. The men worked for the same private transport company listed on Caleb's Lisbon clinic reservation. Miriam contacted the police, but before she finished, my landline rang. Caleb whispered my name. I could hear an engine behind him. "Grandpa, they said you were dying. I found the accounts, and Dad caught me copying them. They are taking me somewhere. Where are you? I cannot see outside," a man shouted in the background. Caleb rushed the final words. "Do not let Mom sign for you. She already signed for Grandma." The line went dead. Seconds later, Claire texted me a photograph of Caleb asleep beneath a hospital blanket. Her message read, "He is safe. Sign Monday, and he stays that way." Miriam stopped me from answering Claire's message. If she believes fear controls you, she will keep talking. A state investigator copied the photograph and found that its location data had been erased, but a reflection in the hospital window showed a red water tower marked Bell County. Only 3 private medical facilities operated within 10 miles of it. Police began checking them while I typed the response Claire expected. "I will sign. Please do not hurt him." Her answer came immediately. "Monday. Come alone. Take your normal medicine first." The phrase normal medicine returned me to the first Sunday after Helen's funeral. Claire had arrived, carrying soup, sympathy, and a plastic pill organizer. She sat beside me and said grief made people forget simple things. I had missed one dentist appointment and left the garden hose running overnight. She turned those mistakes into evidence that I needed supervision. "Let me handle the small things until you feel like yourself again," she said. The offer sounded like love, because love had once spoken through her voice. Every Sunday afterward, she collected my prescriptions, filled the organizer, and photographed it on my kitchen counter. She claimed the photographs helped her remember which tablets needed refilling. Now I understood. They created a record showing that she managed medication for an incapable father. Evan took over my bills. Claire scheduled appointments. When I objected, they reminded me that Helen had trusted family above strangers. They used my dead wife to make every boundary appear ungrateful. 2 months later, Claire brought a durable power of attorney. Miriam reviewed it and insisted upon an automatic termination clause if any agent divided transactions to avoid oversight. Claire smiled and called the clause unnecessary. Evan asked whether I distrusted them. "No," I said. "I trust good paper more than good intentions." That sentence had offended him because he already knew which one he lacked. I signed only after Miriam added the protection. Claire hugged me afterward and cried into my shoulder. I had thought she was grieving her mother. She was celebrating access to my life. The changes in my mind began gradually. On Tuesdays, I struggled to hold numbers in sequence. By Thursday, the fog usually lifted. Claire scheduled board meetings and medical appointments on Tuesdays, then told colleagues I was sharp only when rested. I blamed age. She blamed grief. Neither explanation required anyone to inspect the blue tablets appearing in my organizer every Monday night. I remembered one meeting where Evan asked me to approve a machinery purchase. The numbers blurred, so I postponed it. He later told the board I had forgotten approving it. Claire touched my hand and said, "Dad, fighting us makes people notice." That was not concern. It was rehearsal for Monday's courtroom. Miriam listened without interrupting, then arranged an independent toxicology review of blood taken that morning. The preliminary screen found a sedative not listed in any prescription issued by my doctor. Its concentration was low enough to avoid unconsciousness, but high enough to slow recall, speech, and balance. The pattern matched the dates Claire had documented as episodes of confusion. She had not waited for me to decline. She had manufactured decline one Tuesday at a time. At 5:40, police located the transport van outside Willow Crest Behavioral Center near the Bell County Tower. The facility's admission record listed Caleb under a false surname and claimed he was experiencing psychosis after stealing from his family. Claire had signed as his emergency contact. Dr. Rusk had authorized 72 hours of involuntary observation without examining him. Officers entered with a warrant and found Caleb restrained in a locked room, conscious but heavily sedated. His rescue, however, had to remain a secret. Caleb was moved to a protected hospital room under police guard, while the Willow Crest staff were ordered to tell Claire that he remained sedated. "Did Mom get your signature?" I told him no. He said Claire had discovered him copying files from Evan's laptop 3 weeks earlier. Instead of confronting him, she cried, apologized, and claimed Evan had forced her into the Blackridge deal. The night before the hospital dedication, she asked him to meet her in the parking garage. Dr. Rusk injected Caleb before he could reach the exit. While the drug took hold, Claire placed his hand around a pen and guided it across a confession, stating that he had created North Star, stolen the hospital funds, and manipulated his grieving grandfather. She kept saying it would only be used if you refused to cooperate, Caleb whispered. She possessed a video of Helen signing blank pages during her final week in hospice. Helen was heavily medicated and believed she was approving nursing instructions. Another claimed Helen had asked that I be placed under family supervision if grief made me resistant. My daughter had turned her mother's weakest hours into a supply of weapons. Let them meet. The guardianship hearing had been moved to a private conference room at the county courthouse. Claire's petition described an emergency. An elderly founder suffering paranoia, endangering employees, hiding assets, and accusing devoted relatives of imaginary crimes. Attached were Dr. Rusk's declaration, the staged clinic photograph, Claire's medication records, and statements from 3 board members. 2 claimed I had forgotten conversations. Miriam discovered that all 3 had received promises of retention bonuses from Blackridge. The petition also requested authority to prevent me from contacting Caleb, whom it identified as emotionally unstable and financially dependent. Not until the papers are signed. You are asking me to surrender everything Helen and I built. I am asking you to stop embarrassing yourself before strangers do it for you. The sentence was so cold that I finally asked, "When did I become your enemy?" She was silent for several seconds. When you decided the company mattered more than your family. I remembered paying her college tuition, buying her first home, covering Evan's failed investments, and refusing only one request. I would not sell Mercer Precision while the sale required closing our plant. He ordered me to arrive at 8, carry no second phone, and read a prepared statement before the judge. If I deviated, Caleb would be transferred somewhere no warrant would find him. Behind me, an investigator recorded every word. 19 months earlier, Evan had divided a $6 million transfer into 4 payments just below the oversight threshold. The contract's anti-evasion clause terminated both agents' authority the moment the second payment was initiated. Every later act performed under that authority was void, but exposing that alone would only stop the sale. We needed Claire, Evan, Dr. Rusk, and Blackridge tied to the same conspiracy. So, Miriam prepared 2 folders. The first contained the resignation Claire expected me to sign. The second held bank records, toxicology results, the rescue warrant, and Helen's hospice video. At 7:52 Monday morning, I entered the courthouse wearing the navy suit. Claire stood beside Evan and smiled as if she had already inherited me. Dr. Rusk sat near the judge with a leather case on his knees. Martin Voss waited in the corridor, carrying the final Blackridge purchase agreement. They had all come to watch an old man surrender. None of them knew Caleb was watching safely through a secured video link, or that the judge had received Miriam's sealed request 20 minutes earlier. Claire kissed my cheek and whispered, "Do exactly what we practiced, Dad." I looked at the empty chair she believed belonged to my grandson and answered, "I remember everything." For the first time, her smile faltered. Claire's smile returned when Judge Elena Ward entered. Evan placed the resignation folder in front of me, and Dr. Rusk opened by describing my accelerating cognitive collapse. He spoke gently, with the practiced sorrow of a physician delivering bad news. Judge Ward asked when he had last examined me. "Friday morning," he answered. Claire claimed Caleb had fled after stealing from us, and that my refusal to believe her proved I could no longer separate love from manipulation. Judge Ward turned to me. "Mr. Mercer, do you understand this request now?" "Perfectly," I said. "Before he signs, I would like Dr. Rusk to identify the man in this photograph." She displayed the image of the navy-suited figure outside his clinic. Rusk said it was me. Miriam then produced security footage from a gas station 40 miles away. It showed me buying coffee at the exact minute Rusk claimed to be examining me. Rusk's face tightened. Miriam enlarged the clinic photograph until Evan's wedding ring became visible. "Your Honor," Miriam said, "the patient in that photograph was Evan Cole, wearing his father-in-law's suit." Evan called the accusation absurd. Dr. Rusk tried to amend his testimony, claiming the appointment might have occurred on another day. Miriam moved to the medication records. An independent laboratory had found a sedative in my blood that none of my legitimate physicians prescribed. Pharmacy surveillance showed Claire collecting the blue tablets under Dr. Rusk's authorization. Her weekly photographs proved the pills appeared only before meetings and examinations later cited as evidence of decline. Miriam asked why the prescription used a false patient number and why Blackridge had paid Rusk $280,000 through North Star. She showed the anti-evasion clause, then 4 transfers Evan had divided to avoid review. Authority had terminated 19 months earlier. Claire's hospital contracts, medical consents, voting proxy, and guardianship filing had all been executed after that termination. "They are void," Miriam said. She claimed she had never seen the clause. Her initials appeared beside it. Judge Ward asked where Caleb was. Claire repeated that he had fled after confessing to theft. Evan produced the confession, bearing Caleb's signature. Miriam requested permission to call one witness remotely. The monitor beside the judge came alive. Caleb appeared in a hospital gown, pale but alert, with a detective seated behind him. Claire made a sound I had never heard from her before. It was not relief that her son was alive. It was terror that he could speak. Caleb described the parking garage, the injection, the guided signature, and the locked room at Willow Crest. The detective confirmed that officers had recovered restraints, sedatives, and the original blank confession from Evan's van. Judge Ward asked Claire whether she had authorized her son's confinement. "I was protecting him from himself," she whispered. Caleb looked directly into the camera. "You told them to increase the dose if Grandpa refused." Claire turned toward me, suddenly abandoning the helpless daughter performance. "You made him say that." Her anger arrived so quickly that the judge saw what grief had concealed. I answered, "No, Claire. You finally left him alive long enough to tell the truth." Officers entered the room, but Miriam asked them to wait. One lie remained untouched: Helen's shares. Claire believed those stolen votes could still deliver Mercer Precision to Blackridge even if the guardianship failed. She reached into her briefcase and raised the transfer document like a final shield. "My mother gave me control before she died." Miriam connected a second video. Helen appeared in her hospice bed, weak and confused, while Claire placed blank pages beneath her hand. But the recording did not end where Claire expected. After she left the room, Helen looked toward a hidden camera and spoke clearly. "Grant, if Claire uses those pages, she has chosen money over us. Do not protect her from the truth." The room became silent. Claire's hand began to shake. Then Judge Ward asked the question that destroyed the last place she could hide. "Mrs. Cole, how did you obtain a video that was recovered yesterday from a camera you swore never existed?" Claire stared at Helen's image, as if the dead had reached through the screen to take back her voice. Claire claimed the camera belonged to Evan, then claimed the recording had been altered, then insisted grief had confused her memory. Judge Ward denied the guardianship petition, suspended every disputed transfer, and ordered the court record preserved for criminal review. Evan said Claire had forged Helen's signatures, arranged Caleb's confinement, and pressured him to impersonate me. "You chose the dosage." The room changed. She opened her phone and played a recording made inside our kitchen 5 months earlier. Evan's voice explained that small doses would create believable decline without leaving enough in my system for routine testing. Dr. Rusk could document the symptoms, Blackridge would accelerate the sale, and Claire would blame the stress on my grief. "If he resists," Evan said on the recording, "we move him before he can demand another blood test." Claire had recorded her husband as insurance. Miriam asked why the purchase agreement contained a secret appendix authorizing an additional $8 million payment to North Star only if I was declared incapacitated before the board voted. Sonia revealed messages between Voss, Evan, and Dr. Rusk discussing my weekly symptoms, the false clinic visit, and the date I would be moved to Silver Pines. One message from Voss read, "Keep the founder breathing until the vote. A death creates delay." An investigator read it twice. Blackridge had reduced my life to a timing problem. Rusk admitted altering my medical file and supplying the sedative, but said Evan threatened to expose years of fraudulent billing at Willow Crest. The facility had admitted 3 elderly shareholders from other family companies shortly before Blackridge acquired them. One died within 6 months. What began as a betrayal inside my home was part of a system that found aging founders encouraged relatives to fear losing an inheritance, then provided doctors, facilities, and legal documents to remove them. Claire sat motionless, while the people she trusted traded pieces of her freedom for their own. I asked for 2 minutes with her before she was taken away. The judge refused at first, but an officer allowed us to speak across the table while every camera continued recording. "Did you ever intend to let Caleb come home?" I asked. Her eyes filled, though I no longer knew whether her tears meant pain or strategy. "After you signed, Rusk was supposed to wake him. And me? Silver Pines was temporary. Your contract authorized permanent confinement." She looked toward Evan. He changed it. Evan shouted that she was lying. Claire reached into the lining of her briefcase and removed a small memory card. She said it contained the original Blackridge negotiations, including a video call where Voss demanded that I be made legally invisible. She had hidden it because she knew Evan planned to blame her once the money cleared. "Give it to them," I said. "Promise you will protect Caleb from what people will say about me. Caleb needed protection from you." Her face collapsed. For 1 second, I saw the little girl who once ran into my workshop with a scraped knee, certain her father could repair anything. But I could not repair a conscience by pretending it had never broken. She handed the card to the investigator. The files contained more than she promised. One recording showed Evan and Voss discussing a second stage after the sale. Claire would be declared emotionally unstable, committed under the same process used against me, and stripped of her share. The hidden beneficiary of her $8 million payment was Evan alone. Claire listened as her husband described her as the useful daughter who knows too much. She looked at him, then at me. "He was going to do to me what we did to you." "Yes," I said. "The only difference is that you believed you deserved warning." Evan lunged across the table for the memory card. Officers forced him to the floor. As they handcuffed him, his phone fell from his pocket and lit with an incoming message from a Blackridge security contractor. "Server team in place. Burn everything before noon." Sonia went pale. The mirrored drive held copies, but the original servers were still inside Mercer Precision, where 186 employees had just begun their morning shift. The fire department could arrive in 8, but a deliberate server room fire could fill the older production wing with toxic smoke before either clock ran out. I called plant manager Luis Ortega and gave the emergency phrase Helen and I had created 30 years earlier: "Shut the north gate and wake the red line." He did not ask questions. The red line stopped every machine, unlocked all emergency exits, and sent workers to outdoor assembly points without announcing why. Security footage showed 2 men in utility uniforms pushing chemical cylinders through the loading entrance with badges issued under Evans' authority. Investigators found a message ordering the contractors to begin at 8:35 if the courthouse hearing failed. It was 8:31. Luis called back. "Grant, Sonia's brother remains trapped inside the north side wing." The evacuation count showed 185 employees outside. At 8:34, he found Daniel unconscious beside a locked exit. Luis broke a narrow window, reached through the glass, and released it as firefighters arrived. Officers entered the electrical room and arrested the lookout beside a timer wired to the ventilation fans. They were walking among the evacuated workers, each carrying a remote trigger. "Michael Trent, your daughter is waiting at the north gate." Both suspects looked up, but only one reacted to the false name. The second man pressed his trigger. Nothing happened. During the evacuation, the red line had cut power to the ventilation circuit and isolated the server room from the main electrical supply. The safeguard Helen once insisted was too expensive had saved the plant she helped build. Firefighters recovered an incendiary device, solvent cylinders, and a metal case filled with copied personnel files. Blackridge had prepared forged maintenance reports bearing my signature. They planned to blame me even after taking my name from the company. At 9/6, all 186 employees were confirmed safe. The original servers survived, along with a hidden archive showing 6 earlier acquisitions built on the same pattern of coerced incapacity. Federal agents arrested Voss before he left the courthouse. Dr. Rusk surrendered the access codes to Willow Crest. Evan stopped speaking. Claire asked whether Caleb had heard about the fire. I told her he had heard everything. Her shoulders fell. because the son she tried to frame now understood that she had risked his co-workers' lives to protect her money. The board assembled at noon in the plant cafeteria instead of the executive conference room. I stood before machinists, engineers, cleaners, and families who had waited behind the fence. My hands shook, not from medication, but from knowing how close I had come to losing them. I explained the proposed sale, the planned closure, and the lies used to remove me. Then, I admitted my own failure. I had protected Claire from earlier consequences because I feared losing my daughter. Every debt I quietly paid and every warning I ignored had taught her that love meant rescue without accountability. Silence had not preserved my family. It had financed its destruction. The board unanimously rejected Blackridge's offer, removed Evan, and restored my voting authority. Yet I refused to return as chief executive. The company had survived because workers followed a safety system, not because one lone man arrived in time. I nominated Sonia as interim president and Luis as head of operations, with an employee ownership trust holding the shares Blackridge tried to steal. Before the vote ended, Miriam handed me a sealed envelope recovered from Evan's safe. Helen had written my name across the front. Inside was a letter dated 3 days before her death. The first line said, "Grant, if you are reading this, Claire has already made you choose between being her father and telling the truth." The final page was missing. Her letter directed me to the old cedar toolbox in our first workshop, beneath the tray where she stored broken drill bits. Inside the toolbox, we found the final page sealed beneath a false bottom. Helen had written, "Being Claire's father does not require you to become the victim of her choices. Tell the truth, protect Caleb, and let consequences do what your love could not." I read it twice before handing it to him. 6 months later, Evan pleaded guilty to conspiracy, kidnapping, financial fraud, evidence destruction, and attempted arson. Martin Voss went to trial and was convicted. Claire rejected every agreement until prosecutors showed her Helen's complete letter. She asked why I had loved Mercer Precision more than her. "I never loved the company more than you. You mistook every boundary for rejection because I kept removing the consequences that might have taught you the difference." Claire lowered her eyes. The judge sentenced her to 11 years, less than Evan, because her memory card had helped expose Blackridge. Forgiveness is not access. You can release hatred without returning the key to someone who locked you away. Those words became something we both had to practice. Sonia became permanent president. Luis joined the board, and the employee trust acquired 35% of the company. We created the Helen Mercer Safeguard Fund to provide independent legal and medical reviews for older business owners facing sudden incapacity claims. The fund soon protected more owners and the families who relied on them. On the first anniversary of the courthouse hearing, the Children's Recovery Pavilion removed Blackridge's name from its donor wall. The hospital restored Helen's original dedication and placed Caleb's name beneath it for helping recover the stolen funds. I was invited to speak, but I asked Sonia and the nurses who protected the records to stand beside me. Claire watched the ceremony from prison on a television she shared with 20 other women. She later mailed me a 4-page letter. She admitted that her anger began years earlier when I refused to promote Evan, but she also admitted the truth no sentence could soften. She had known the pills were harming me, and she continued because my confusion made her feel powerful. I did not answer immediately. When I finally wrote back, I told her I loved the daughter I remembered, mourned the woman she had chosen to become, and would not lie to make either of us comfortable. Caleb eventually began exchanging supervised letters with her. Whether their relationship heals is his decision, not mine. I visit Helen's grave every Sunday. I tell her about the company, the fund, and the grandson who now designs safety systems instead of escape plans. Then I return home and leave the front door unlocked for Caleb. I once believed protecting family meant absorbing every wound in silence. I know better now. Love without truth becomes permission. Mercy without boundaries becomes a hiding place for cruelty. Claire tried to erase my voice, steal my work, and turn my age into a weapon. She failed because the people she dismissed as weak kept records, asked questions, and stood together. I did not save my family by defeating my daughter. I saved what remained by refusing to disappear for her.